Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching once a week. If this is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. Like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. Comment down below, all that good stuff. Just thanks for listening. Really does mean a lot. This episode, as the title suggests, will be about the Pitt Season 2, Episode 14, as well as the season premiere of Hacks Season 5. So, hope you enjoy my thoughts. I'm really glad that I'm covering Hacks as well because the Pitt is getting me down. The Pitt has been getting me down. I don't have much introduction, so I'm just going to jump straight into it, but thank you so much for tuning in. So, what I mean by the Pitt is getting me down, the thing about the Pitt is that the material itself is very heavy and emotionally charged, but I've also just been having a hard time. I think with the season coming to a close, I'm feeling very dissatisfied. And obviously, as of recording this, I haven't watched the finale. I say as of recording this because I am recording this Tuesday evening, so I don't know. I think I should be able to get it out Wednesday evening, Thursday early at the latest. Hopefully this episode will drop before the finale drops, but whatever. My point of saying that is just in case this episode comes out after the finale airs, I haven't seen the finale yet. I also know some people have seen it because there were screenings. I have not seen the finale, and I currently, as of episode 14, am feeling very dissatisfied with the arcs and the endings, and specifically with Samira's character not coming back next season, the lack of Samira's story wrapping up, and just all of that. I'm feeling very dissatisfied with the Pitt and frustrated with some story decisions and stuff, which I will get into. And so I'm glad that I have a reprieve and a little giggle after. But let me just jump straight into the Pitt. So we are still in the phase where they are trying to transition into night shift. The night shift is already here, but there's a lot of day shift work to do. So it's a weird in between with the anyways. Monica finally leaves, the annoying clerk who was helpful but then ended up being a horrible person. She finally leaves this episode, thank God. A big storyline for the Pitt season 2 episode 14 was Whittaker losing his badge, and then he's looking for it, and I didn't care about this. I didn't care about this. I have to be honest. I think again it goes back to there are other storylines later where I'm I just don't understand. It's just frustrating when we know that Mohan's scenes are being cut or have been cut, and even as I said, people have seen the finale and they release the stills that they do every week. And there are people who have seen the finale who are I don't know what still this is from. Samira did not get this scene. Same thing with Victoria. Victoria Javadi, there's a scene apparently with her parents that there was a still up. Apparently people who have seen the finale, that's not in the finale. So unless there's an extended cut that they're releasing on HBO Max that they weren't showing in the previews, there are scenes that we know are being cut, and it's just frustrating when I feel there's so much repetition or pointless scenes, which Whittaker losing his badge added some pockets of humor here and there, but it just felt I don't know. I'll get into it. It's just I'm feeling really dissatisfied with how the Pitt is wrapping up, and I think that I was so energized at the beginning of the season, and I really enjoyed and was very hopeful. And I think honestly, the thing is, I would have been disappointed by the decision to cut so much of Mohan's scenes regardless. But the fact that this is how they're wrapping up her arc angers me. And so I'm just having a hard, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated and I'm upset. There was a patient with a sunburn who we've seen here and there. She gets wrapped up. I'm happy for her. McKay is treating her. This scene felt more like the purpose was to show us what McKay's thinking of doing post shift than anything about this patient specifically. But because she had plans, And she's like, but honestly, I think the 3B sound better, book, bath, bed. So everybody's just tired. Everybody's just tired. And then Robbie pulls McKay and is like, we have a patient. Or no, he pulls McKay to ask her for help with digitizing stuff. Anyways, Ellis asks Langdon about his first day back, and Langdon continues to irritate me, and I'm sorry. Like, the thing about Langdon is he does have a good moment this episode where I do feel like there's a moment where I'm like, you know, and I'll get to that where I feel a little bit less annoyed with Langdon later in the episode. But even this, it's like, Ellis asks how his first day back is, and again, it's all of, I mean, in his defense, Ellis does bring up Robbie, but it's not like Langdon out of nowhere brings up Robbie. But like, once again, he's like, Robbie doesn't want me back. Then Ellis is like, I worked with him for 10 months. He's not mad at you. He's mad at himself for letting you down. And it's just like, okay, I don't care. I'm so tired of the Langdon. Like, I think I'm just frustrated because there's a lot of interesting stuff there that I feel like I don't like the way it was executed. And that's just my opinion. Like, I don't know. I do think I need to accept the fact that it, like, and I did a little bit with the Santos and Langdon conversation a few episodes ago, where I was like, I think what I wanted from this scene is not what I got, but I'm trying to accept the fact that what I want from their dynamic, I may never receive or might not receive it like this quickly. Like, I wanted like a level of understanding where like they each saw each other's side and it like felt resolved. And I just realized after that interaction that I don't know if I'm ever going to get that with the Langdon Santos dynamic. And so I've let that go. There's just something about like, it just feels really repetitive. And I do feel like there was a moment here. I just kind of wish, and maybe this is wishful thinking, and maybe I'm whatever, and I'm not a TV writer. Who am I to give my opinion on how art should have gone? I'm a viewer. I care about this stuff, but like at the end of the day, I'm not trying to tell people how to write TV. I don't know. I'm not a TV writer. I just wish we had gotten this moment of Langdon shifting his confidence a little bit earlier, like a couple episodes ago, and then concluded in a better place. I don't know. I'll have to see how the finale goes, but I'm just like not satisfied. I did really appreciate Ellis in this moment. I'm a big fan of Ellis. I'm glad that we have more of Ellis in season 3. That's exciting. Robbie finds Javati recording a TikTok and like scolds her for this, and she like stands up for herself. She's really like done with Robbie's like, whole thing. Like last episode, this episode, I think she's really just tired. She's really tired and she's just saying what she wants to say because she's basically like, she checks him and it's like, you don't understand the position I'm in. And I really appreciated this because I think as much as young people, we don't understand what it's like to be, older, and like people who have longer, especially in a workplace, somebody who has more years under their belt in this workplace, especially something like medicine when you're a student. Obviously, Robbie has a lot to teach her. But I think there's also something really necessary about being like, you also don't understand what it's like to be a student right now in this. Like, I liked that she was like, yeah, you don't know what it's like, TikTok with ICE stealing your nurses. Like, you don't understand what this is like. I appreciated that. I appreciated that moment. I think especially because of what Monica said to her a few episodes ago, where it was like, oh, back in my day. And I talked about this when I talked about that episode about how I really don't like the patronizing way that some older people talk to younger people, as if like, I really appreciated her kind of standing up for herself, because I feel like this is a huge part of like why I think it's so frustrating when you're told by older people, like when you're talked down to or this way, because it's like at the end of the day, and it's the same thing with like, I am on the cusp of a lot of things. I'm not gonna understand what it's like to have social media when I'm like 7. Like, that wasn't my experience. I didn't have social media at 7 years old. So even that, it's like there are just lived realities that I don't understand and that older people don't understand about being young in our, about being Anyways, I'm not making sense, but I really like this moment from Javadi because she's right. Okay, minor detail, but Donnie's leaving and Robbie lets Donnie leave. And it's just like really fascinating to me. The reason I wrote this down in my notes is because I've been reading a lot of interviews that the cast has been giving, and it's so interesting how it wasn't intentional to make Robbie have a bias against women. And like, while this is, yes, a very minor thing, and I understand, like, and I even said a few, like, it's so funny to me because it's like, it really, there are a lot of moments that I feel like, but Robbie does have a bias and his bias does play a huge role. And I do also think, and I've said in the past, that I feel like there are moments where people make it 100% about a bias he has when I think there's something a bit deeper. Like I think situations are sometimes more nuanced, and even like the little part of my brain that wants to be like nuanced is like, well, he has a newborn child, the other people don't. But it's just like, I do feel like there is a bias Robbie has. I think, you know what frustrates me is I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, and then it just uh, the I don't know. I don't know. I've like really lost a lot of my benefit of the doubt with Robbie that I've had. I have to be honest. I think something really shifted in me when they announced that Samira was leaving. Like, something really shifted in me. I've become angry at the pit. I've become angry at them. So like I don't know, because like I don't want to sound like a hypocrite or like, because I literally a few podcast episodes ago was like, I don't think that every single time people are saying that there's a bias, that it's necessarily a bias. I think that there's sometimes something deeper. And I've kind of changed my opinion. I mean, I do think that things are more nuanced, and I do think that, but I think that is just the reality of misogyny, where it's like, it can be misogynistic and also there can be a nuanced layer, if that makes sense. Like, you can think that you're not, that the like, you might in your brain be like, I'm being harder on Samira because I see myself in her, but there is still something about the fact that seeing, like, even if this is the case, like, there is misogyny there, even if there's also another layer, if that makes sense. So I feel like I just got into a point where I'm like, I still feel like the misogyny is there throughout, even when maybe there is a, like, I'm taking a, like, I don't know. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense? I just feel like when there is just a difference in how Robbie treats women versus the men. And I don't think it's always so black and white that, like, 100% he's going to treat a woman differently for doing one thing versus a man doing the same thing. But I do just think more times than not, he's not very good with women. So, like, I don't know. I'm really not making sense. I just feel like my opinions have really evolved. Because I feel like I was trying too hard to be like, well, it's not, I don't think it's so simple that it's misogyny, because I think that there are moments that he's like, I feel like I was thinking of it too black and white when I should have, or not should have, but I've realized that the misogyny can be there and it can be layered. Like, I do think that there's an undercurrent of misogyny, even when maybe from Robbie's perspective or the writer's perspective, the reason that he's lashing out at Mohan isn't misogynistic. I do think the misogyny is still present. Anyway, sorry to go on that tangent. This irritated me. Like, well, you're letting Donnie leave. Also, sorry, little tangent, but I don't remember which actress it was, but somebody was talking about how, maybe it was the actress who plays in K, about how, like, they asked her about the misogyny, about how Robbie treats women, and she said something in her response that, like, she didn't really see that because he was, like, harder on LinkedIn. But, like, the thing that you need to realize, I'm not trying to be mean to her because, like, I, but that argument frustrates me, because it's like, you need to look at how he responds to people proportionate to their behavior. It's like, yes, he's very hard on LinkedIn, but that's because LinkedIn did something really bad. He's disproportionately angry at Samira for her panic attack. Like it's about how hard he is on the women for something that he wouldn't be as hard on the men for. Like there's literally, and I understand, and this moment I did say, and I do still think that there's a slight difference, but like even in the way that he like lashed out at Samira, but then let Ogilvy off the hook. And I do, again, I said this a few episodes ago, like I do think there is something about like Mohan is the attending, or not attending, but she's like she's more superior, so she should have been more careful with the case. But it's still just something where I feel like if Whitaker was the one who Ogilvy was seeing, I do think he just doesn't give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm going on all these unnecessary tangents, all because Robbie let Donnie go, and that made me be like, I think he is a misogynist. Anyways, sorry. Donna and Abbott have a very brief conversation about Robbie because she's worried about Robbie and she's like, can you talk to him? This is what I mean by it became really repetitive and I got really frustrated that we were seeing so much of things over and over and over again. Same with the like Robbie's bike gets hit and there are so many scenes of the bike first. Like they're trying to fix the bike. Whitaker's looking for his badge, so he's out there when the bike gets broken, and then Robbie has to deal with the ambulance people that broke the bike, and then he goes out there a few times and has little mini conversations with Duke, which leads up to one big conversation. And it's just like there was so much when I was rewatching, because the way I recap, or honestly, this isn't that good of a recap, but the way that I take notes for the podcast is I watch the episodes when they drop, and then like a few days go by and like right when I'm going to record the podcast or like a day before, I'll rewatch and take notes. So when I was rewatching, like there were a lot of sections where I was like, okay, I already know what because like I already wrote this down in my notes. I don't need to. And a lot of that was Robbie and Duke just having a similar, like it kept building up, and it felt very similar to the last few episodes where it's just been like Robbie and Dana have a conversation, and then it leads up to the big conversation. And it's just a little bit frustrating that we're getting those same micro conversations over and over again that I don't feel like are necessary leading up to the big conversation. We could have one minor one leading up to the big conversation. That would be enough. We don't need all those little moments leading up to the big conversation while you're then cutting the scenes of wrapping up Samira's story with Orlando, especially if the whole narrative is that they're wrapping up Samira's story. I don't feel like they're wrapping up Samira's story. There was no need for so much Duke Robbie lead up just for so much of Samira's storyline to be cut when we're getting more of Robbie. Robbie's not going anywhere. Samira is going somewhere. So you can't wrap up her story in a nice way. It makes no sense. I'm sorry. I need to calm down. I'm going on all these unnecessary tangents. The motorcycle's broken. More on that later, although I kind of, went through it as is. Grady, the asthmatic patient from a few episodes ago, gets smart. I don't remember what that acronym is for, but like they'll help him with coverage. It's like some kind of all like an inhaler and some other stuff all in one. So I'm glad that he's doing well. Duke gets the CT results, and as I said in my last episode, he has an aneurysm. Robbie explains to him it could rupture at any time and then you die. You get the surgery, this is what to look for, and he needs to think about it. Robbie's worried that he won't take care of himself while Robbie's gone. So Orlando gets a room upstairs, and when he's being wheeled upstairs, Robbie asks Samira how she is, and she's like, is that a trick question? And I'm like so angry on her behalf. I need to calm down. And like, this isn't even that big of a deal. I think I'm just like every moment that she's on my screen, I'm like, she's gonna die. She's not dying. But like she's leaving. So every moment I feel like I am grieving the last moments that I'm gonna have. Why am I being so dramatic? But like this just angered me because it's like she feels like she can't even be honest, because the last time she had a moment of vulnerability, like he was really mean to her. I'm just angry. I'm angry on her behalf. Anyways, then he's like, not a trick. I wasn't intending it to be. And she says that this one got past her. And he's like, you did everything you could. And she's very upset about this. And then he says, it was his mistake, his decision, his mistake. And she goes, what decision? Getting diabetes? And he goes, not choosing a higher place to jump from. Like, I'm just really mad, not only because we're not getting a satisfying conclusion to the Samira story, but because I feel like the scenes, I mean, I didn't see them, I haven't seen them, so maybe not. Maybe I'm making this up in my head. But I just feel like any scenes to further tell this story and wrap up this story with Orlando would have been so powerful that I'm mad that we lost it, because not only were those moments that I think would have been meaningful to wrap up Samira's story, but also because I feel like that storyline, Orlando, was so powerful that it frustrates me that this is how it's ending. He goes up to the ICU and Robbie's making a mean comment about him maybe attempting suicide. Like, it's upsetting to me. It feels like Orlando's story, Samira's struggle, Samira's anxiety even, and Robbie lashing out at her. It feels like a lot of it now is just meant in the later episodes. I don't feel like it was like this at the beginning. I'm not saying the entire storyline has been to further Robbie's story, but it feels like these last few episodes have been, it's just been Samira storyline and her struggle and all of this. It feels like it's just been meant to show how unwell Robbie is. And it's frustrating me. It's frustrating me. And I'm upset. I'm upset. And I do take, and I understand this is a TV show, and I understand Orlando's a fictional character. I do take things and suicide. I jokes about suicide, people struggling. I take that seriously, and it's the reason that I've tried to have so much empathy for Robbie, because I saw that in him, and I did take, and I do like so because of that, I feel like I've been trying to be easy on Robbie, because I'm like, and it angers me. It angers me. This whole thing angers me. And I understand, and I'm not trying to vilify him, because whatever. It's just, it's really angering me. It's really angering me. Al Hashimi was right when she was like, you lost your empathy. Okay, let me calm down. Not enough Mohan this episode. McKay tells Robbie that Javadi is not just like posting on TikTok. She's trying to get information on Jesse, and also says, have you ever watched any of her TikToks? They're actually like really great. I love this. This was a nice moment. Somebody calling Robbie out, even if it was very briefly and kindly, and like not in a like I think that's another thing, is like Robbie's just going to torment everybody this season, and like what consequences does he get? What? And I understand it's like, but it's just frustrating me. It's just frustrating me. Mohan leaves. Robbie is just his. I just feel like Robbie's been really cruel. And as much as I've tried to have, and maybe we'll get a moment in season 3. I would really hope that we get a moment in season 3 where he's like, hey, I was unwell. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have behaved that way. I feel like we're not going to get it. I feel like we're not going to get it, because I feel like I don't know if the writers really understand. Like, I don't know. I feel like we're supposed to just excuse Robbie's behavior because of the state he's in, and that bothers me. And maybe maybe we will. Maybe I'm underestimating. Hopefully I'm wrong, and we will get a moment where Robbie's like, that was wrong of me. Maybe we'll get that. I appreciated this brief moment of him being like, Robbie, you're wrong. You don't always know what you're talking about. Maybe actually download TikTok. He said his account got banned for like something really unserious. It was like lewd, sexual. I don't know. It was something like that. I didn't write down what it got banned for, but like, I don't believe him. I think that was meant to be a joke, but it was very unserious. There's like a fight that comes in. One person is stabbed with a flag. I don't have much to say, but I did want to mention the flag stabbed patient, because that is very 4th of July, and I didn't want to just not mention it. But anyways, a woman comes in with like chest pain, but the EMTs messed up like the lead placement. I don't know. It's like something, I don't know anything about medicine, but it's like way too low. Apparently you have to do it like right under the bra line, and they didn't. It's like basically not even anywhere. Anyways, so they missed something on the machine because it wasn't placed properly, and luckily, she ends up being okay, but Robbie's pissed off because he's like, they placed these horribly. And more on that later. Lupe leaves in a new night shift clerk receptionist. I don't know her position. And I didn't write this night shift person's name down. I'm so sorry. But anyways, it was so cute. I have a new ship now because she brings food. Lupe's like, that smells so good. Then Javadi comes in and is like, ooh, what is that? And like, they have a moment where I'm like, I feel that. To me, that was more chemistry than Mel and Langdon have had their entire. I'm sorry. I know I'm not a Kingdon shipper. Okay, but there is a subsect of Mel and Langdon shippers who like genuinely ick me out and piss me off so deeply that I have an aversion to that ship just because of the way some people talk about them and shipping them. Apparently, in the finale, and this isn't a spoiler, this is just based off of like the description. Mel and Santos invites Mel to like do something after the shift, and there was discourse about that and people being like, oh, but Mel and Langdon, and that pissed me off so much because I'm like, they're not even explicitly in a relationship right now, and you still want all of her actions to revolve around that man. It's weird. Even if they were explicitly in a relationship, I think that would be weird that people are like, what does that say about Langdon? As if she's not her own character. But they're not even explicitly in a relationship, and you guys are still making everything she does about. Like, I can't, like, it pisses me off the way some people don't treat Mel like she's her own character. So I just have an aversion to that ship because of the way people ship them. But I genuinely, on a real note, I don't care. I don't even know why I went on that tangent. Oh, I was trying to diss them. I'm sorry. I'm really not trying. I really don't care if you ship them. I don't. I personally do not. Javadi and the new night shift, I ship them, okay? She made her food. Well, she didn't make her food, but she brought food and she brought enough. And there was a rapport. I liked it. It brought me joy. I liked that better than anything she had with Mateo, okay? Moving on. Ellis is treating a patient and then Langdon witnesses. This patient has like a giant gash on the side. Something happened at a concert. I don't know. They talk about music. I don't really care about the music that they're talking about. I'm so sorry. But at some point, Langdon like leans over and then he like, his back is in pain. And Alice is like, you should go home. And he's like, I'm just waiting for things to calm down. And then she says something that I thought was so beautiful. She's like, I didn't write it down verbatim, but like something along these lines about express trains don't stop at your station. You just got to jump. That was beautiful. Everybody on night shift is so profound. Also, the family reunion group that was there for a lot of the beginning of the season, when like somebody just took a random medication and then another one, I don't remember what the other person was there for, but now they're back and he got a tug of war injury. I don't know. Like this is one of the things that I was thinking of where I'm like, why did we need this patient? This like respectfully added nothing to this season. We've already gotten a good amount of this family, this storyline. I don't know what this added. I don't feel like it showcased much about night shift or the day shift or anything that made it necessary when we're cutting scenes that wrap up a really important storyline. Like this felt really unnecessary and random. Even like the patient with the big sunburn, at least in that moment we learned a little, like we got a bit of information about McKay and her plans for the fourth and after, and like what, how she was feeling about the shift. I don't understand what this added. Why did we need those 2 minutes that this tug of war family that we've already seen enough of come back? Like, I don't understand why they would include this, but then we lose scenes of Mohan and Orlando's wife, Mrs. Diaz. I don't understand this. What was the purpose of this? I don't care about these tug of war thing. Like the moment, like that, the guy with the with the giant gash on his face. I'm like, okay, Ellis and Langdon had a moment there. What was the purpose of this? Moving on. Caleb, the psychiatrist, I believe, or he's somebody from psychiatry, or maybe he's a social worker. I don't know. He's come down a few times to deal with psych cases, and he and Robbie had a conversation earlier on in the season about therapy, and Caleb overheard Robbie saying that Orlando should have just found a higher place to jump from. So he kind of has a moment with him about this, and it wasn't enough for me, okay? Robbie needs more lashings. Like, people are just letting him. Mohawk got berated for having a panic attack, but Robbie gets to just be outwardly suicidal and, like, callous about other people maybe being suicidal, and that's just fine. Somebody should yell at him. Okay, this is really I thought this was funny. Okay, I liked this. It was very unnecessary, and again, if I had to choose between things that move the plot along and like little comedic relief like this, I would prefer the scenes of Orlando's storyline. But Whitaker overhears while he's on his quest to find this badge. He overhears an old woman who doesn't have a ride home, so he offers her a lift. Okay, great, super nice. He gets a notification, and this was so funny because Santos is like, he's like, oh no, and she's like, cow giving birth. Like, it was so funny, and then he's like, no, has a like $200 like charge and a strike on his account because the old lady said something racist and threw up in the back of the car. Like, and then Santos says no good deed. I'm like, okay, wicked, pop off. This was, I of all the unnecessary storylines, this made me chuckle a little bit, to be quite honest. I still don't. The tug of war thing was completely unnecessary, and I'm still mad about it. Anyways, Langton and Whitaker have a fight in the break room, and this is not an original thought. Many people have said this. This was so weird to me. It felt like there was context missing, and maybe I just don't understand the reference. But even according to people who do understand all the references, because he's like, they go into this whole like, I'm not Skipper, I'm the professor, and obviously they're talking about Gilligan's Island, but I don't know the ins and outs of that, nor do I frankly care. It's also interesting because it's like Whitaker has been known to not know a lot of like pop culture stuff. Like, literally earlier in the episode, when he's looking for his badge, Santos is like, Langton is like, retrace your steps, and he's like, the last place I saw it was in the ambulance bay with Ogilvy, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And then she makes a Clue reference. She's like, in with the candlestick or something like that. She makes like a Clue reference with Mr. Mustard, or she says, if you know Clue, you know. And he doesn't understand that, but he knows all about Gilligan's Island. Is that just like am I supposed to understand why he knows this reference and I don't? I mean, I understand why I don't know it, but like, it makes no sense. It feels kind of random. Anyways, they have this big fight about, and the gist is, he's like, we're not friends. Like, why are you, I don't like the way you're talking to me. And a lot of people are like, there's obviously subtext that he's mad at him on behalf of Santos, but I just don't feel like this was executed well. Like, there could have been a moment, this would have been more compelling to me if there's a moment where, like, instead of him being like, hey, we're not friends, why you're talking to me this way, if there's like a moment where he's like a little harsh to Santos again, and then Whitaker stands up for Santos or something. This felt very random. Like, he's just looking for his badge. Langdon's taking medication, and he says something like in a way that is like clearly like, and Whitaker gets mad, and it was just like, I didn't like this. Moving on, because I don't have anything intelligent to say about it. It just made no sense to me. And not just because I didn't understand the references. Robbie's outside looking at his bike, and as he's doing this, gunshot wound, patient comes in and he's singing, and Robbie is just worried over his bike. The EMTs are like explaining it, and he's like, my bike's broken. It was the most unserious scene ever. Then there's a scene where Santos is charting, and she's explaining about the patient who came in who blew off his fingers, and his sister was this whole caretaker because their parents got deported. And then Mel's like, I've been there. And then the other person, who I do not remember who it was, I'm so sorry, that Santos was explaining this to, was like, he was like, your parents got deported. And she's like, no, I thought you said departed. And then Mel is like, did any of you guys treat the reenactors? And as soon as this happened, again, not to be such a hater, but I knew the Langdon and Mel fans were going to latch onto this. And they did, because apparently all you really need for a couple to like mean something to you guys is that they like the same things. I don't know. It's just like, I don't see the chemistry. I don't see what they bring. It feels so weird to me. And I'm really not trying to be a hater, but like the more the season goes on, the more hateful I become. I understand Robbie. Like I'm angry. I'm angry now. I feel like I'm being mean. I'm being mean. I'm becoming Robin. I'm lashing out and I'm being an asshole unnecessarily. But like genuinely, I knew that people were gonna go crazy for this, and it's like there's nothing there. Oh my god, they like the same thing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being such a hater. I genuinely, sincerely do not care if you ship them. I don't. I really don't ship them, and I feel like I'm genuinely in a bad mood. I'm in a bad mood. I understand Robbie. I'm with Robbie if he had to deal with like the hormones that come with menstruating, because like that's when I get really mean. That's when I get really suicidal. Robbie could never. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like delirious for some reason. Okay. But anyways, that's not even. I went on an unnecessary tangent because of how much of the hater I feel like I'm being right now. But anyways, in this moment, there was also a lot of discourse about people thought that they were rude to Mel in this moment. I don't think that they were that rude to Mel. I really don't. Okay. I think like yeah, she brought something up and they weren't super engaged. I also just think, and maybe it's just because I've been in a lot of therapy and I am also a very sensitive person, who if I was Mel in this moment, I would like feel hurt by this. But I feel like a lot of the work I've done in therapy is like checking the facts of the situation. And if I was Mel in this moment and this happened to me and I felt a certain way about it, I'd be like, okay, let me look at the situation. I don't think they were trying to slight me. Okay, they were stressed about work. It's not about me. Like something can upset you, and they can also not have done anything wrong. Like I don't know. People were acting like they were so mean to Mel. They didn't like shut her up. They were just like, oh no, we don't know. And they let her talk about it a little bit more. And then McKay was like, you should look into that. And then, not to her face, they maybe made some kind of mean looks. The way people are frustrated with you, I'm sorry, if it's not directed at you, like if somebody upsets me and I'm silently frustrated to myself, that's not me being rude to them. I'm not rude to them. If you regulate your emotions and you hear people out and you like nobody was rude to Mel. Nobody was rude to Mel. Sure, they didn't like further the conversation, but nobody was rude to Mel. Like the way some people reacted to that scene was as if they had like cut Mel off and been like, I really can't talk about this right now. I'm busy. That didn't happen. They let her speak. They were like, oh, I don't know. You should look into that. And then they were silently kind of frustrated. I don't know. It really pisses me off the way some people talk about the show. Like I need to calm down, but it's like that was a moment where I was like, oh yay. I didn't think anything of that. And then I got on Twitter and people were like, the way that they were so mean to Mel. I'm like, how were they mean to Mel? They weren't mean to Mel. Like they were not mean to Mel. And maybe it's just because I am somebody who like I've been in social interactions where like maybe I talk a lot or I don't read the room and people aren't really engaged in the conversation. And maybe sometimes that does hurt my feelings. Sometimes it hasn't hurt my feelings. But even when it has hurt my feelings, I've learned to be like, that wasn't them being mean to me. That wasn't a personal slight. Like, even sometimes people can be rude to you and can like cut you off and be like, I really can't have this conversation right now in a way that feels rude. And it doesn't need to be this like big thing. Like, I don't know, human interactions are very complex. And this honestly was a moment that didn't feel that complex to me, that people blew it to this proportion of like they were being so mean to Mel. They really weren't. They really weren't mean to Mel in this moment. They didn't know anything about the reenactors. What did you want them to say? Like, oh, I love the Ren Fair. They don't like the Ren Fair. They don't know anything about the reenactors. Why do you want people to have fake conversations? They heard her out. They said, you should look into that. And then they went back to their work. What are we talking about that they were so rude to Mel? Some of you guys, genuinely, I don't understand the show you're This is honestly, Emmy gets rage baited by the Pitt viewers. Moving on. A patient comes in who like crashed into a telephone pole, And this is the moment that I was referring to earlier, where Langdon has a good moment, because this patient is like paralyzed and they don't know, and he can try to do like a like fix a dislocation before going to surgery. And if like either way, like if he doesn't do it, he'll risk being paralyzed, but he could also paralyze him. But like either way, he's gonna risk it. Langdon's a little bit nervous, but then Robbie's like, doctor the fuck up, and Langdon does it, and the guy is not paralyzed. He actually, I think, begins to regain some sensation. And there's a nice moment after where Langdon like steps out, and you can see that he feels satisfied, and you can see that maybe some of his confidence is returning. And you know what? I'm glad because Langdon's like, woe is me, I suck at this. The thing was pissing me off. So I'm glad that he did something well in that aim that earned him some confidence. Hopefully the way we wrap up be less annoying to me. But also he's allowed to be annoying. Me personally finding him annoying isn't a crime. This is just my podcast, so I'm sharing my opinion. I feel like I just spent like 40 minutes being a hater. Now I have to be like, guys, it's okay if he is annoying. You can like him. You can think they were being mean to Mel. I just simply disagree. So on the Robbie and Duke conversations, there were a few moments. The bike is broken. Duke looks at the bike. The bike can be fixed. It's not. He can still ride off. And it crescendos to this moment where Robbie is like, I don't want to be here anymore. Because Duke is kind of like, I've been here for a few hours and like I can tell, and like this is difficult. And like Robbie's like, no, it's not here. This is the only place I actually am good. Like that I have a purpose. I don't want to be here anymore, like alive. And I really understood that. That really resonated with me. It reminded me of when I was a junior, I was auditioning for a play. When I was a junior in college, I was auditioning for a play. And in the audition waiting room, I was making conversation, and somebody was asking me how my freshman year was, because I was like, I'm a junior, and I was talking to these freshmen, and I was like, my freshman year was horrible. My freshman year was horrible. So like, if you're struggling, that's okay, because my freshman year was horrible. And I'll never forget, this was like a direct exchange. This girl was like, bad like you wanted to transfer, and I said, bad like I wanted to die. I was like, it wasn't about the school, okay? I wanted to die. So I really understood Robbie in this moment, you know, because sometimes it's not about the environment you're at. Sometimes it's just about your own demons. I also, and this is like so dramatic of me, but like, this is how I felt. I remember when I was like really suicidal, I remember being like, everybody says, and I wrote like a poem. It wasn't really a poem. I was just whatever. But one of the things I wrote was, everybody says that this isn't funny. Okay. I just have to laugh because, but I remember writing, everybody says that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, but being myself doesn't feel like a temporary problem. Like, damn, what the hell was wrong with me? No, I'm kidding. But you know what I realized? And you know what I've grown and I've changed, and the reason I don't feel that way anymore is that I'm always capable of changing and growing. And the things I don't like about myself, I can fix. And the things that I maybe think I need to fix, I can re-examine and learn to appreciate. And you know, so it's like being myself is in some way a temporary problem because I'm ever growing. And the things that frustrate me about like the things that I don't like about myself, I can work to improve. And the things that I don't like about myself, because maybe I was told that I shouldn't like them about myself, I can learn to not listen to that. I can learn to not care. I can learn to shift my perspective on things in ways that then bring healing and comfort and all of that good positivity, you know? Like for so long of my life, like for so much of my life, I felt ugly. And I struggled so much in trying to combat that feeling ugly with like telling myself I was beautiful. And because that was just something that I was like, I don't know if I can ever really believe that I'm beautiful. And I don't mean that in like it just felt counterintuitive. And then I heard somebody say that the way you look is the least interesting thing about you. And that really changed my perspective on things. And now I don't try to convince myself I'm beautiful. I don't care if I'm beautiful. I don't care if, I mean, beauty is also very subjective. So I've just gotten to this point where I'm like, I don't care if people think I'm ugly. I don't care if people think I'm beautiful. That's not what I want to be valued for. So it's like, while yes, being myself, I'm always going to be Emmy, but Emmy's capable of changing and growing and expanding, and so it is still a temporary. Anyways, sorry. Moving on. The EMTs that did the thing incorrectly finally arrived because they're like, when the gunshot wound victim came in, Robbie was like, he's been waiting for the right EMTs to come, and they finally do with another patient, and he like publicly scolds them, and I'm like, they definitely wrote this in. I mean, I know they didn't, because I feel like by the time they finished filming this, the backlash to how Robbie lashed out at Samira hadn't yet happened. But I'm like, they threw something in there to be like, see, he yells at men too. Like, okay, like, he made good points. I just don't care about it coming from. But like, pop off. I guess, like, he's right. Like, he's like, you were afraid of like touching her boobs. Her living is more important than that. Like, he's right. I just don't care about it coming from him. Anyways, the episode ends with Al Hashimi showing Robbie her chart, and this is when we find out that Al Hashimi has a seizure disorder, and that's how the episode ends. And I fear for how this is going to come up in, like, the thing that bothers me about this, and I touched on this a little bit last episode, or at least I tried to. I feel like at the beginning there was like, Al Hashimi's not ready to be here, Al Hashimi's not ready to be here, and it kind of felt like she proved that she was ready to be here. And it feels like at the last hour, the 11th hour, whatever the saying is, they had to find something to prove, no, she's actually not equipped to be here, in a way that I'm like really scared how that conversation is going to happen. And I said this last episode for sure, I wish we had gotten more of that. Like, there was like, that was in like the second episode, and then she's been great the entire shift. And then like 2 episodes ago, once again, she's struggling again. It falls flat when this doesn't actually feel like it's a problem. So it's like, if you're bringing this up as a problem to validate that Robbie's right to be suspicious or like hesitant about welcoming her in, when she's done nothing but prove that she's like perfectly capable of being here, and also maybe like has a nice fresh perspective on certain things that maybe Robbie doesn't, it feels like you're bringing that in to be like, no, actually Robbie was right the whole time, when he wasn't. I don't like it. But anyways, moving on to Hacks season 5, episode 1. It was called EGOT. So basically, I haven't covered Hacks on my podcast. Hopefully, if you're watching season 5, you're caught up. But basically, where we left off in season 4, Deborah had quit her late night show because they wanted to fire Ava, and she wasn't gonna let them do that. So then they were in Singapore because that was a loophole for working, because technically the translator is performing, so she's not performing. And then the season ends with Deborah being reported dead on TMZ, and the obituary really upsets her because they say like she was retired, she like disgraced late night or like whatever, and so she's mad, and she needs to rewrite her story, and that's where we pick up in season 5. So we see all these like memorials outside her house in Las Vegas, and then they pull up, and when they get out of the car, the mourners are shocked that she's still alive, and we get the information that TMZ got a bad tip, and they're like, but they said that you didn't make it, that you were taken off a boat in Singapore, and it was reported that she didn't make it to the hospital, but that was because she came to in the ambulance, and so she just went back to her hotel. But anyways, they explained, the mourners, that it made sense to them because of her breakdown. And this is when we find out, I don't know why I say this is when we find out, because like the season ended. Basically, there was a smear campaign against Deborah in the press after the late night thing, because basically she did a speech and she was like, I've decided to end late night because they're making me fire Ava, and they pulled her off air before she finished that episode of the whatever. And so apparently they did a bunch of things in the press about how actually she had a meltdown, and the reason that was stopped was because she had a meltdown after that. So basically there's a whole smear campaign about how Deborah went crazy and she quit late night, she couldn't handle it, and so her reputation's Never been worse. And she's like, no wonder the obituary was really bad. So they need to shift the narrative. She doesn't know how yet, but she's going to figure it out. Kayla and Jimmy are struggling with clients because a lot of their meetings go well, but as soon as the clients find out that they can't do business with any of Bob Lipka's like companies, they're dead in the water. Bob Lipka is the president of the company where Deborah was the late night host and wronged them, right? Because she was basically like, they want me to fire my writer. And then Bob Lipka smeared her. Bob Lipka also played by the guy who played Fitzgerald Grant on Scandal. They have different characters, very different vibes. He's like less depressed in this. Like he doesn't seem as sad. Like Fitz was always sad. He always looked like deeply sad. Anyways, they also lost Lassie, their client, and Jimmy's like, Lassie signed with somebody else. And Kayla's like, no, we actually lost her. She's gone somewhere. Jimmy wants to downsize, but Kayla is like, we're not downsizing. We need to project success. Their reputation is still not great because of the tussle with Bob Lipka. She's like, after you beat up Bob Lipka, and he's like, I didn't beat up Bob Lipka, okay? We just struggled over his phone. Which we did see in season 4, because basically when Deborah's giving her monologue, Bob Lipka tells the people at the command center, the whatever it's called, to turn off the cameras and like to cut the feed. And Jimmy's like, no, and they listen to Jimmy. So then he goes to call and Jimmy knocks the phone off of his hand. And then anyways, then they get a text from Deborah. She wants to have lunch. So they drive to Vegas, road trip to Vegas. Robbie Hoffman's character, Randy, I believe. To me, that's just Robbie Hoffman. Robbie Hoffman's character drives them. Deborah wakes Ava up, and basically she's figured out what she needs to do to rewrite her legacy. She needs to get an EGOT. At lunch, we find out that she's already halfway there. She has a daytime Emmy for like an award show or a game show that she did, and a Tony for producing Spamalot. So she just needs an Oscar. She needs Jimmy to get her an Oscar-worthy part. And Randy here, Robbie Hoffman's character, knows all the ins and outs. The project, like she can film something right now, it just can't come out before the non-compete expires. But if they record something now, as long as it's not out before, then she's fine. And I really like Robbie Hoffman's character, Randy. For the Grammy, she's decided that since none of her 7 nominations have ever gotten her an award, she's been nominated for all of her comedic parody soundtracks. I don't know. She's going to compete in the audiobook category by narrating her own memoir. And Jimmy's like, oh, great, you have a memoir. And she's like, no, I have to write a memoir. So she sets off to write her book. After this lunch, Ava and Jimmy have a conversation, which I really liked, because he's like, what's going on? Like, an EGOT, and she's like, you don't understand, okay? Things were bad in Singapore. We need to do and like whatever she wants, okay? We need to be supportive. And then Jimmy's like, I need you to write something really good. And Ava has a script for something called Mall Girl, I believe, which is so Forbidden Fruits core. Like, it's about a girl who lives in a mall, or like something about a mall. And like, that's so Forbidden Fruits core. Like, malls are very in right now. Nostalgic, you know? Not that I've seen Forbidden Fruits, but I know it's a cult that works in a mall. So throughout the episode, we see the like memoir writing process with Tony Kushner. And this was really funny. At first, she has a plan of how fast they're going to get it out. He wants to do something really in depth. First, he's like, I did all this research about where your family originates. Then the next time we see him, he has a soundtrack, and clearly Deborah's not vibing with this. Ava's having a great time, however. Ava's having a great time. She's so excited. She's like enthralled. I forgot to mention this earlier when they're talking about the book. She's like, luckily I know the best writer, and she mentions Tony Kushner. And Ava's like, what about me? And she's like, you're too obsessed to read my autobiography. I love that. I love the Ava Deborah dynamic. I love them. Jimmy, Kayla, and Randy. If that's not Robbie Hoffman's character's name, I'm so sorry, but I'm pretty sure it's Randy. Anyways, they drive back. They're driving back to LA, and while they're like parked charging Jimmy's car, they talk about the Oscar. There's like a moment where Jimmy's like, she can direct a documentary, right? Like that's got to be an easy category. And Randy's like, there's a bunch of wars right now. Like there's gonna be a documentary from every one of those categories. She does not stand a chance, and that's like unfortunately very true. That's unfortunately very true. I mean, I think it's wonderful when people who are going through like horrible situations like that are able to tell their stories in documentaries. I'm not saying that's horrible. I'm saying the fact that people are even in these situations where their countries and their lives are being decimated is very deeply sad and very not okay. But also then Randy is like, there's already a movie that would be great. It's the something Buckley movie that Jimmy's producing that has some Oscar buzz. And Jimmy is like, I don't want to risk this. Like it's the only project we have right now that's not tied to any kind of issue. And it would only it would only be able to be a small part, and they've already filmed everything. And then Kayla's like, but we have reshoots, and we have additional photography. And Randy knows all this information about how somebody won an Oscar for this very, very brief part. They were only on screen for this much, and this person won an Oscar for something that was shot only in additional photography. And Jimmy's like, how do you know everything? And then Randy said, and I wrote this down verbatim because I thought this was so beautiful. Once I started learning about Hollywood, I couldn't stop. Such a fascinating mix of culture and business and art and history. It's America. And I so agree. Like, I love entertainment. I love the industry. I love living in LA. And that's so true. Like, that's so true. Like, people shit on, like, not always, but a lot of the times, like, there's a group of people, there's a subsect of people who, like, shit on the arts and shit on Hollywood and all of that. And I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I feel a kinship to this character. And not just because Robbie Hoffman's married to Gabby Windey. And I literally, when Gabby Windey was on The Bachelor, tweeted, Gabby, if you're interested in women, I'm available. Before she was in any way open. I've been on the Gabby Windey train, okay? Don't mess with me. Wish you the best with Robbie and Gabby. While they're at additional photography, Jimmy realizes that Deborah would actually be a really good choice for one of the characters because the actress is like really not doing a good job. And so they bring it up with the director, and the director is like, yeah, that's fine. You have to fire her. I'm not good at being direct. Then Deborah and Ava meet up in a recording studio, and Ava's like, we're recording the book already, or something with the book. And she's like, no, I've given up on the audiobook, okay? But I can still win a Grammy. There's a category that is very, very not great this year. It's regional Mexican music. And so she like sings in Spanish. And I loved it. This was so funny to me. Mi gente latino. Then there's a hilarious scene where Jimmy and Kayla are firing the actress. And at first, Kayla's the bad cop and Jimmy's the good cop. And then he pulls her out of the trailer, and he's like, I shouldn't have told you. Like, you should be good cop, okay? And she's like, that's an okay, yeah, that's an oxymoron. Fucking pigs. I'm like, I love her. Kayla's one of the best characters. And then she switches up and is like super, super nice to the point when he's firing her, she's like, you're being mistreated in the workplace. Like, you may be losing this job, but we're signing you. I love her. Kayla's like definitely one of my, like, she's so funny. Her and Jimmy is such a great dynamic. And like, this was so funny. So funny. It was so funny. She starts complimenting her. She's like, well, first when she's being really harsh on her, she's like, you're being outperformed by a corpse, mama. And then when she's being overly complimentary, she's like, you're so beautiful. Like, your boyfriend's like you. And she's like, oh, I have a wife. And she's like, gay ass. Like, it's so funny. It's so funny. This was comedic gold. I really needed this. Like, I watched this immediately after I watched the Pitt episode, and I really needed the laugh. I really needed the laugh. Shout out to them. Deborah comes in to like her kitchen, and she has realized at this point that Ava's not pushing back on anything, and so she's clearly like trying to get a reaction out of her, because she's like, I've realized how I can cement my legacy. Like, I think I need to primary AOC. And Ava's like, yeah, I mean, we'll need to get you an address in New York. And then Deborah's like, okay, cut it out. Like, what? You're not doing your typical Ava thing where you're like, push back on me. I don't need a yes man. I need a no woman who I will ignore. And Eva explains that like she wants to be supportive because things are really dark in Singapore, and she seems so motivated. She seems like so into this, and she wants to support her. But then she explains, Ava does, like she gives her opinion, and she's like, you're going to be known, like you're a comedian, you're going to be known for comedy, and is this really what you want your legacy to be? And then she says, and I wrote this down verbatim, she said, I don't know that trying to find some loophole to game the system in an obscure awards category is what you want to be remembered for, is it? Because she's basically like, I know you want to get the EGOT and you're really motivated, but like, is getting the EGOT on a technicality, is that really going to cement your legacy? And she's like, what is the biggest accomplishment for like a comedian? And she's like, hosting late night. And then she's like, okay, what else? And then in Square Garden, but she doesn't know how she's going to get there because she can't perform. Then they go their separate ways, and Deborah realizes, she goes to watch something of hers, because earlier in the conversation, Ava's like, you said that in your, like, you're going to be known, you're a comedian, you're always going to be known for that. You said that in your monologue. And she's like, I never watched that. And so she's pulling it up to watch it, and she realizes that all of her show has been scrubbed, and her special has been scrubbed as well, because it was on their streaming service. So they took everything down. They smeared her, they took everything down, and she's angry. She's like, they're not just smearing me, they're erasing me. I cannot let them take my legacy away from me. And so she's decided she's going to do a comedy show tomorrow. She calls Jimmy to tell him this, and also turns down his role. She's like, I don't care about that anymore. I don't care about the EGOT. Poor Jimmy now needs to find somebody to take this role. But anyway, she's decided she's going to do an underground show. They're going to confiscate phones, so it'll be secret. Nobody will find out. And that way she can still do comedy. The next day they do the show. Phones are confiscated. Also, Jimmy, luckily, he calls his mom, and his mom agrees to do the part that Deborah turned down. So, like, Jimmy's going to be fine. I was worried, but Jimmy's going to be fine. So Deborah does the show. She's like super motivated. Clearly, it's great. She's on a high. She's shopping the next day, and she gets served a video of it they recorded a video. It's on the internet. She's going to be sued, and we see her going to court. She speaks, and I love this. I loved this because basically Jimmy's like, for somebody who's like not allowed to be in the news, you have a lot of press right now. And then he's like, oh my God, you leaked the video. And then Ava's like, no, I leaked it. And when she's giving her like answers to the press outside of the courtroom, she's like, I've been silenced, and I'm not going to like allow them to silence me. In fact, I'm going to say everything as soon as I'm able at my Madison Square Garden show. And now she's like so excited. Like they needed a way to announce it. It's so good. It was so good. Like it was such a good episode. So much fun. Like I really liked the sincere moments between Ava and Deborah about Deborah's legacy, and Deborah trying so hard to like be an EGOT, but it's like, is that what you really want your legacy to be? I really appreciated those moments. Like it was so well done. It was so well done. It was so funny. It was so good and so needed after that Pitt episode. This podcast episode is actually not going to be super long. Hopefully this episode should be out Thursday morning at the latest. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, I will be talking about the Pitt season 2 finale, as well as Hacked season 5 episode 2. And maybe something else. Maybe, I don't know. I was going to say maybe to fill the rest of the podcast time, I'll talk about Euphoria, but I don't know if I want to talk about Euphoria. I don't know. Half the episodes are short-ish, and I mean, I did kind of breeze through this, but that's honestly because I'm kind of tired, and I can ramble, and I rambled a lot about the Pit. So maybe I'll try to ramble about Hacks, but maybe I'll share my thoughts on Euphoria as it's airing to fill time, because I don't know if I can really talk about each Hacks episode for an hour. So I don't know what I'm going to do once I wrap up the Pit. I mean, next week the episode will be the Pit season 2, and then Hacks season 5 episode 2. But the week after that, I don't know. Maybe I'll talk about Euphoria. Maybe I'll talk about something else. I don't really know. Whatever. I mean, I've been watching Survivor, but I think I don't know. I'll figure it out. But thanks so much for tuning in. Sorry if this episode's kind of short. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry, this episode was like genuinely a disaster. The Pit has exhausted me. I'm like so tired. I feel like I've worked 12 hours. But thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the episode. You'll hear from me next week. What am I going to cover once I'm done with the Pit? I don't really know. I mean, I am covering Hacks, but along with Hacks, I don't really know. I'll think about it, and if you have any ideas, obviously, recommendations, suggestions, all that, let me know. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great week.